The retirement ceremony was supposed to be routine. Colonel Sarah Mitchell had organized dozens of them during her 15 years at Fort Campbell, but this one felt different. The old man who'd requested to attend sat quietly in the back row, his civilian clothes hanging loose on his thin frame. His face carried the kind of lines that come from decades of hard decisions, and his eyes held a distant quality that made him seem present and elsewhere at the same time. He'd called the week before, his voice soft but insistent. He wanted to attend Captain James Patterson's retirement ceremony. When pressed for his connection to Patterson, he'd simply said they'd served together long ago. The staff had added his name to the guest list without much thought. Military ceremonies often drew forgotten faces from the past, old soldiers seeking one last taste of the camaraderie they'd left behind. The ceremony proceeded with military precision. Speeches were made, medals presented, memories shared. Captain Patterson spoke about his 22 years of service, his voice cracking when he mentioned the men who'd shaped him, the leaders who'd taught him what it meant to wear the uniform with honor. He spoke of Vietnam, of missions that remained classified, of a commander who'd brought his entire unit home when everyone expected casualties. Then Patterson did something unexpected. He stopped mid-speech, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on the old man in the back. His face went pale, then flushed with emotion. He stepped away from the podium and walked directly toward him, his movements urgent, almost desperate. The room fell silent, confusion rippling through the assembled officers and guests. Colonel Mitchell rose from her seat, concerned. She'd never seen Patterson break protocol like this. As she moved to intercede, she heard Patterson's voice thick with emotion, asking the old man a question that seemed to freeze everyone within earshot. He wanted to know his call sign, needed confirmation of what he already knew but couldn't quite believe. The old man stood slowly, his joints protesting years of wear. He looked at Patterson with eyes that suddenly seemed younger, filled with the fire of a warrior who'd once led men through hell and brought them home. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent room with the authority of someone who'd commanded not through rank but through respect earned in blood and sacrifice. Phoenix 1. The words hung in the air like a benediction. The reaction was instantaneous. Patterson snapped to attention, tears streaming down his face, his salute so sharp it could have cut glass. Then, like a wave spreading across water, every officer in the room rose. Those who'd served in Vietnam knew the legend. Those who hadn't knew enough to recognize that something profound was happening. Even Colonel Mitchell found herself standing at attention, her hand rising to her brow as she stared at the unassuming old man who'd sat forgotten in the back row. Phoenix 1. The call sign belonged to Colonel Marcus Reeves, a name spoken in whispers in military academies and officers' clubs. He'd led a classified rescue operation in 1972 that saved 43 captured soldiers, including a young lieutenant named Patterson. The mission had been deemed impossible. Reeves had volunteered anyway, assembling a team of 12 men who'd walked into hell and emerged with every single prisoner. The operation had cost Reeves everything: his health, his hearing in one ear, 3 bullets that still lived in his body, and a silence imposed by classification that meant his heroism would never be publicly acknowledged. He'd disappeared after the war, refusing medals, declining promotions, choosing obscurity over the recognition he deserved. For 50 years, the men he'd saved had looked for him, wanting to thank him, to tell him that every birthday, every grandchild, every sunrise they'd witnessed had been his gift to them. Patterson crossed the room and embraced him, no longer a decorated captain but a young lieutenant whose life had been saved by the man now trembling in his arms. Other veterans approached, men in their 70s who'd served with Reeves, who'd followed Phoenix 1 through fire because they'd known he valued their lives above his own. Colonel Mitchell watched as the ceremony transformed into something unplanned and infinitely more powerful. She understood now why military tradition mattered, why call signs carried weight, why some names deserved to be spoken with reverence. Phoenix 1 had risen from the ashes of an impossible mission and lifted 43 souls with him. He'd asked for nothing in return except the chance to see one of his men retire with honor. The salutes remained raised until Reeves, overwhelmed and humbled, gestured for everyone to stand at ease. But the respect lingered, thick and tangible, a reminder that true leadership never fades and real heroes often hide in plain sight, waiting only to be remembered. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe for more powerful military stories that honor our heroes. Share this with a veteran who deserves recognition, and drop a comment telling us about a leader who changed your life. Let's make sure no hero is forgotten, and no call sign goes unanswered. Hit subscribe now to keep these incredible stories alive.